The Lunaverse, Episode 27 by Rainbow Double Dash, Crisis on Two Equestrias. Chapter 15, You Can Do Magic. Celestia couldn't even walk. Technically, she had no physical form now. Her body had been dissolved into nothingness, as her soul had been locked within the burning heart of the sun. There was no literal prison bars for her to rail against, no cell to pace. She had no eyes to see out of her prison with. Nevertheless, she at the same time had all those things. Even her mind was not quite equipped to handle a complete lack of a body, while being conscious and alive. So it rationalized a surface for the sun to be made out of solid gold, and a great cage, almost like a bird's, within which she was captured. She envisioned a body, her body, within that cage. She paced around within it, as she would have to actually physically were there. Celestia's hooves clinked along the metal floor of her prison. The fires of the sun would reach out through her cage and try to soothe her. Anger, she knew, would not help with matters, and so she forced herself not to get angry, and instead to think. Antithesis was young, impetuous, and impatient. She could not have possibly thrown together an effective banishment spell, certainly not one that could keep Celestia trapped for 1,000 years. Part of Celestia's mind was already examining the spell, looking for weaknesses. She had a few promising leads, but with all her power bound to the sun, it was likely she would get some kind of outside help. An alignment of planets, perhaps. Now, Celestia did not believe such an alignment would happen for a good 500 years. Even something as simple as utilizing the powers of the unicorn tribe when he intended to move the sun, since they would have to, would probably be enough. For now, however, Celestia was trapped within the sun. And worse, she was trapped on the other side of the planet. Glancing up at the world only showed her open ocean, with some far land to the east. She was suspended here, the heat from the sun already bringing unusual warmth to the world below, heating up the ocean that was supposed to be in the middle of winter. If something wasn't done in the next few days, heat would create a hurricane of impressive performance. Celestia chose not to consider what would happen if her sun remained in place for longer than a few days. Not yet. The consequences were too horrible to contemplate. She had faith in her little ponies to figure out how to move the sun anyway. But as long as Celestia was here, suspended in the sky above the wrong hemisphere, she couldn't watch a single thing that was happening on the world below. She didn't know how her student, or her erstwhile companions were doing against Antithesis. If her sister had managed to escape, or had been banished along with the interloping Luna. Nothing. It was maddening. She was Celestia the Undimmed, the Daystar, Sun Incarnate, and she was powerless. It should have been dawn. The weather schedule even called for a relatively warm day. Instead, the moon and stars hung in the sky. The cold winter night lingered. Across Equestria and beyond, ponies and other beings wondered if this herald returned the nightmare moon. Into yesterday morning's abortive start. But what if that were the case? And why was the mare and the moon so prominent on the lunar surface? The affairs of the outside world, however, lured to the 4 unicorns and 1 abomination, guides to the alicorn that lay within the Everfree forest. Or at least it didn't matter to Antithesis. She could frankly not have cared less about what the Trixies and Twilight thought. They had been spoiling her fun all night, them and the Princess 3. But at least the latter part had been taken care of. Antithesis came to a landing halt into a center in the forest clearing, a host kicking of ice and snow and dirt as he skidded to a halt, horn glowing and incident violent as he once again stowed her wings, lips pulled back to expose bare teeth as her head whipped around, looking for the source of all her problems, finding herself wishing that she could spare the time to figure out how to move the sun and moon and make it daylight. She found her target surprisingly quickly. One of the Twilights suddenly came rushing from the forest, horn glowing brightly as he fired a beam of light at Antithesis. She ducked low, growling loud and striking out with her own magic. A beam of pure force struck Twilight and sent her sprawling away with a cry of pain. Antithesis smiled, shuffling her front hose and feeling a bit better for a moment. Then galloping towards Twilight, who was groaning and picking herself up. Antithesis' horn glowed again, and she slashed out with lightning. Twilight crumpled in pain, screaming. Antithesis would have smiled, but she saw a moving blur beside her and spun quickly, barely avoiding as a blob like a clear liquid and fake pony seat tried to buck her. She deftly avoided the blow and lashed out with a hoof of her own, but the blob moved. through the thoroughly constructed illusion fell then, filling one of Trixie's beneath it. Eyes wide, she had been found out. She turned to gallop away. Wrong! Antithesis cried, reaching out telekinetically for Trixie. She didn't have time to actually establish a hold, however, as quite suddenly from her right, an entire tree came flying, wrapped in lavender effervescence. Antithesis grasped and leaped high, barely avoiding it, and found herself confronted by the other Twilight. The first one was still picking herself up. This Twilight pawed at the ground a few times, before conjuring up lightning of her own and lashing out. Antithesis created a shield and blocked it, though she wasn't sure why she bothered. The lightning didn't feel like it had much force behind it, though it was unsurprising given that the Twilights weren't exactly used to combat. Antithesis snorted, dropping her shield and picking the tree up. She spun it around over her head a few times and threw it forward. Twilight's eyes widened, and then her horn glowed, and she popped out of existence. As she reappeared a moment later, the tree had passed, exactly where she had been. Grinning at Antithesis, she popped in and out of existence a few times, appearing here and there with little effort, and then being hurled into the royal in a random direction at random speed. Antithesis' eyes went wide. What? She demanded, looking up. The magic of the royal was still in place. Antithesis looked back to Twilight, found her gone, as was the other Twilight and Trixie. Trixie's voice came from everywhere as Antithesis looked around. That's right, Antithesis. We've learned how to counter your tricks. Antithesis' head went round, looking for the source of the voice, but finding none. That's impossible! She screamed. And so are you. Trixie's voice countered. There's a flash and a pink pop. Trixie appeared, cape and all, in front of Antithesis. Trixie's talents are immense. She has discovered magic sight and teleportation. She is wrong! Antithesis screamed and released a null pocket on top of Trixie, pushing back reality and pouring in all of her hate. She held the pocket for a good minute, but at length finally let it drop. It was greeted by the sight of Trixie, on her stomach with a front hose over her head. She opened one eye after a second, and stood suddenly, looking no worse for wear. That wasn't sure that would work, she nodded, but the great and all-powerful Trixie has become immune to your null pockets. Antithesis took a step back at that, eyes widening and jaw dropping. What? There was a series of 2 lavender pops, one blue one. Suddenly, Antithesis found herself staring at both Twilights and both Trixies. Now then, one Twilight said, horn glowing with magical energy, time to end this! She lashed out with magic. For the briefest instance, Antithesis thought that this was somehow a trick, maybe an illusion of Trixie's, but the magical beam that struck her was most certainly not fake. She felt herself flying backwards, head spinning in pain as she landed on the ground, and quickly scrambled to her hose. The 4 ponies she hated the most of all in this world had disappeared in a series of pops. This is where you scream. Trixie's voice said from everywhere. This is Newton. It was part of Trixie Wide. Doing so would be playing into the blue unicorn's hose. And with that knowledge, though, she still found herself stopping her hose and shaking her mane, screaming as loud as she could, I hate you! Lunaverse's horn stopped glowing, as she took in a few deep breaths. Trixie eyed her, but Lunaverse only waved her hoof. Give me a few moments, she said as Sparkle returned, dispelling the invisibility spell around herself and putting a hoof to Lunaverse. The 4 of them were dug down in a blind they had hastily constructed on the edge of a clearing. A blind supplemented by an illusion spell that easily hid magical auras, rather than afflicting any physical senses. It wasn't perfectly constructed. Lunaverse had shown Twilight how to do it, rather than casting it herself, and she needed to hold on to her magic for the current performance. But it would help as long as it wasn't scrutinized closely, something Antithesis wasn't likely to do. Their plan had been brought up by Trixie, but they hinged on Lunaverse's proficiency with illusion magic. From the blind he could see out in the clearing, but the physicists couldn't see them. Trixie was providing the amplified voice and taunting, while Lunaverse was providing the figments and ghost sounds that the antithesis was leading to believe were the ponies themselves. She was also occasionally casting invisibility spells on Twilight and Sparkle. The latter two were dancing out from behind on occasion, providing some actual spell work into the figments. But Lunaverse couldn't keep it up for long, not with the number, complicity, and glamour she was capturing. You're doing good, Twilight provided, patting Lunaverse on the withers. Lunaverse, steady yourself, then cast a invisibility spell over Twilight as she grit her teeth. Can't keep this up, Lunaverse nodded. We'll have to wrap things up and fix it quickly. Trixie had to admit she was impressed. She would have learned illusions of this quality in time for her next show. Focusing her mind back on task, she looked back at Antithesis, who was bucking the ground like a bongo in a rage, started speaking again. She had to get Antithesis furious enough that the alicorn wouldn't be focused on what she was doing, what was happening, wouldn't notice the tiny imperfections in the illusions, wouldn't double check the auras so climax finally occurred. Antithesis watched as one of Twilight's horns glowed, and the fireball came from nowhere. It struck her aside, sending her flying. She had known that Twilight could conjure fireballs from nowhere. But then, apparently its Samaras had developed about 1,000 new spellcasting for powers from nowhere. It was patently possible. But so was Antithesis. Didn't mean she liked it. Antithesis' magic reached out to Twilight, but the purple unicorn disappeared in a flash and a pop. She tried to follow the teleportation to its destination, but didn't have time as she saw a host coming for her face. She ducked and lashed out, but Trixie had bucked into her to avoid the blow. Then Twilight was all but on top of her, once again telekinetically lifting up a tree, then a second and sending them both flying at Antithesis. She caught one in her own telekinesis and avoided the other, sending it flying back. But the Twilight simply teleported away. The one Antithesis had caught, she hurled at Trixie, but that Trixie too disappeared in a flash, and pop of her own. Ah! Antithesis screamed, running her vocal cords ragged. Gah! Trixie instead, this one with a glowing pink horn, mocked, waving her hose in the air. That's you! That's how dumb you sound! Antithesis lost the largest fireball she had ever made at that one. She eat and popped out of existence as the fireball connected with the ground and rolled a few hundred feet, then exploded somewhere in the forest, sending dirt and wood everywhere. Antithesis' horn glowed brighter, but she didn't lash out with her magic this time. Instead, she charged, horn down, right at the nearest Twilight. Just as that Twilight was about to teleport away, Antithesis reached out with her magic and held her place. Had Antithesis been more focused, she might have noticed her grip didn't feel quite real. But she was anything but focused right now, except on taking her horn and ramming it straight into Twilight Sparkle's chest. Twilight managed, at the last possible moment, to twist out of the way. Antithesis went shooting past, but instantly adjusted herself, bending her forelegs and hind legs. She couldn't impale Twilight, but she did manage to buck with all the powers of an alicorn right into Twilight's chest. The alicorn's scream of pain mixed with a rather satisfying wet crunch. She went flying away, tumbling to the ground and landing on her side, still screaming. Instantly, the other Twilight and the two Trixies teleported to her side, eyes wide in shock. Antithesis grinned brightly as he reached out again, holding all four emphatically in place. They struggled and fought, but none of them could teleport. Antithesis telekinetically lifted up to the ground behind her, a circular section 20 feet wide and 6 feet thick, hovering in place over the four of them as he looked on in horror. Now die! She screamed, letting the earth fall upon them. There was a scream of frightened shock, then an earth-shaking thud as it kicked up dust, snow, and dirt. So as Antithesis stared, eyes wide as the dust began to settle, breathing heavily. It's, she intoned, staring at the pile of dirt and stones as she crushed the four ponies beneath. Is it over? The alicorn took a step forward, then another, blinking rapidly. No ponies teleporting in to suddenly ruin her day. No more did Trixie torment her and challenge her and make fun of her. There was only silence in the forest, the sound of her own heavy breathing. I win, she said, a wide smile breaking out of her lips. It's over. It's over. They're dead. They're dead. I win. I win. I win! Now! Antithesis' eyes widened at the sound of the voice. She turned around quickly, just in time to see a flash of lavender, pink, and blue light cloud her vision. Four of them closed in, invisible thanks to Trixie, just within a few paces of Antithesis before making their move. And that pony had a chance to turn around with the beams of pure magic lashed out from the horns of Twilight, Trixie, Little Moon, and Sparkle. Antithesis screamed, not in rage, but in pain. Real, actual pain. The first such cries that the four unicorns heard her ever utter. She tried to stand at first, but bucked quickly. She tried to set her horn glowing, to cast a spell or open a null pocket. None of the unicorns knew, and she failed in any event. Her very form seemed to shift and twist and bend oddly. Her wings appeared. Even though she flapped as hard as she couldn't rise. The attack hurt the ponies, executing as such, however. They had no idea how much magic was needed to take down Antithesis, so each of the four of them were giving it their all, pouring their magic and everything at Not Pony. The unicorn whose body shattered the elements of magic. The force of their magic was enough that the beams of arcane voice eventually lost any color definition, becoming simply rays of pure white light. As the eyes of each of the four unicorns glowed a similar color, the forest was bathed in a bright light, brighter than the menacing sun. Little Moon buckled at first, exhausted as she was for the illusionary show she had just helped put on. She fell to her knees in the hocks. She felt her concentration slipping. She felt a hold on her withers, though, and a glance found her looking at Sparkle. The other unicorn smiled a little, but then she too buckled, losing her ability to stand, but not her ability to keep the magic going. Little Moon felt herself determined to equal Sparkle's efforts, not as a rival trying to compete or show off, but as a pony to make sure that if the others were going to give it their all, she would too. Looking at Sparkle, she knew that the other unicorn felt the same way. Okay, guys, let's show this creepy bitch how we do things downtown. Trixie was on her knees, and Hawks too, simply not having the magic output of the other three. For once, though, she didn't care about showing off. She wasn't here to show off. Odysseus had attacked her, and attacked one of the few ponies she ever known who had offered her an honest helping hoof. Twilight had forgiven her, and Trixie just owed it to Twilight to put it all forward as she could. Twilight lost her ability to simply pour out magic glass. She kept thinking of Celestia, her mentor trapped in the sun, placed there by Antithesis. The pony's name was truly fitting, since he was the complete opposite of Celestia. Impatient, cruel, violent, savage, the perfect opposite of everything that Celestia was. Twilight was going to make sure that Antithesis couldn't hurt any pony ever again, no matter what it costs. Antithesis had fallen to the ground by now as well, screaming incoherently, gnashing her teeth and bucking her legs, flapping her wings in pain. Her body was descending and contracting, expanding and collapsing randomly. She was less like a pony, and more like a doll that had been filled with something moving and writhing. Then there was a flash. Antithesis' screaming suddenly stopped, and the magic that the four unicorns' magical assaults ended. The four of them gasped for breath, each of them swaying buckets and trembling uncontrollably, fighting to stay awake, each of them but a second away from overchanneling, their bodies fighting desperately to hold on what little magical power they still possessed inside of them. Antithesis, meanwhile, didn't move at all. She lay still and unmoving on her side, eyes wide and unseeing, mouth open and face frozen in a scream of rage. As Twilight tried to stand but couldn't, she could barely summon the effort to keep her head off the ground. She turned to look at the unicorns. Think we did it, she said. Sparkle nodded. Thank the stars, she gasped. I don't think. Antithesis twitched. The four ponies jumped, or tried to, but each still lacked the strength to rise. Like a slow-moving motion picture, Antithesis' wings curled around herself as he drew her hose, head down towards her bow. Eyes were still unfocused as she too began to gasp for air. Antithesis screamed as she scrambled to her hose, twitching and sinking. Her body convulsed, still as bright pink. Glowing veins began to trace their way down her form, looking almost like cracks. She kept screaming, even as she stumbled around, hitting the ground with her hose. Flapping her wings, she held her head down, eyes closed the whole time as the four unicorns struggled to rise. Eventually, Antithesis stopped screaming and thrashing around. Pink veins didn't disappear, and she turned around, eyeing the four unicorns, began to stumble forward. Each step was making shaking, unsure legs, like those of a foal, figuring out how to walk. I am an antithesis, she hissed, trembling, pain-racked foreign. I am an alicorn. I am the hatred and loathing of the shattered element of magic. I will not die in such an asinine way, being filled with magic and exploding. Odysseus spread her wings wide as the four ponies managed to struggle to their hooves to the sky. Spreading her wings wide as her horn glowed deep black. This ends now, she declared. As the four ponies watched, the sky and horizon seemed blotted out. A massive null pocket was beginning to form, starting the edges of their vision and rushing towards the epicenter focused on them. Regardless of things, the null pocket was the size of the ever-free forest, or a goodly portion thereof. Gloomman looked at the null pocket and realized, at last, in spite of everything, they were doomed. Maybe she had more power, or Trixie had, or Twilight or Sparkle. Maybe they'd been able to last for just a little longer against Antithesis, but they hadn't. They were doomed. She looked to Sparkle. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for goading you into making yourself look like a tribalist. I'm sorry I wasn't the element of magic you wanted me to be. Sparkle nodded, received the same conclusion Lulamoon had. I'm sorry you were horrible at magic, she said. You're not. You're great. You're amazing. Trixie put it in quickly. This is an all pocket closing in rapidly. Trixie wishes. I wish I could do magic like you. I wish I could stay and learn some magic tricks from you, Little Moon said. I'm sorry, She looked at the closing doll pocket and realized there wasn't time to make a list. I'm sorry for everything. Me too. Me three. And me, Twilight confirmed, leaning to the other four, pulling him to a hug they couldn't refuse. But mostly, I'm sorry it took us till now to say it. Wish we could have been friends sooner. Well, we're friends now, right? Right. Sparkle confirmed, leaning to hug and closing her eyes tightly, bracing herself for nothing. And not nothing in the sense of the null pockets' nothingness that tried to swallow and consume them, reduced them to nothing as well, and pulled them apart atom by atom, grinding those atoms down to utter entropy. No, this was a nothing of simply nothing happening at all. Nothing bad, in any event. Sparkle opened one eye, glancing around, and found that she and the other three unicorns were standing in paths of snow and dirt, just like they had been standing on. Just beyond its limits was utter nothingness. The blackness that Antithesis conjured up. It was held back, stopped from falling inward somehow. The ground beneath them began to glow, a combination of blue and purple. The four unicorns broke from their hug in confusion as the symbol began to trace itself on the ground. A pale blue, crescent-shaped nebula set with the emerging stars, framing a six-pointed lavender starburst, identical to the key mark on Antithesis' flank and shape. But the colors were brighter. The four stared in comprehension. For Twilight Sun one hoof and let out a groan. We four, she said, as a bright glow suddenly manifested on her chest, over her heart. We're the biggest idiots in Two Equestrias. Little Moon raised an eyebrow for a moment. Lightning struck. She groaned as well. Yeah, we are, she confirmed. The null packet collapsed, nature not liking a vacuum. Even Antithesis couldn't manage to maintain forever. At least, not yet. She planned to work on it yet. Once she got over the massive amount of pain she felt in her everywhere. At least 9 times she had to do this, seeing as the Trixies and the Twilights were standing 4 in a row, upright, white glows on her chest, standing up in Antithesis. What? Antithesis demanded. Letting herself fall from the sky, she glared at the 4 unicorns. What is this? The last came at a sudden shooting pain in Antithesis' chest that overrode the lines of pain still etched in their way across her body in the form of pink, glowing veins. She put a hoof to her chest and steadied herself on her wings and other hooves. It was another several moments before she could look back at the 4 unicorns. Vision blurry, however. She couldn't tell them apart. How? One of the unicorns stepped forward. You're right, Antithesis, she said. It felt like her caught in Antithesis' ears. She couldn't tell if it was a Twilight or a Trixie speaking. We were fools in thinking that the solution to stopping you was just filling you full of power or attacking you head on. That's what you've been doing. That's what we did. Because we didn't realize what made us different from you. Phenomenal cosmic power? Antithesis asked. Began to. The pain shot forward again as she stumbled, nearly falling over. She breathed in deeply, trying to fight her way past the pain. It wasn't working. You were created because the element of magic broke, one of the other unicorns said, and so we were focused on the fact that you existed, on all that power you had, that we didn't stop and realize what that meant. The third element of magic didn't break because it couldn't tell us apart. Or it did, but that's not the whole story. The element of magic broke because we couldn't get along. Because magic isn't just power. Magic isn't about who's deserving or least deserving. Magic is about connections, about reaching out and affecting others. It's not power, it's friendship. Friendship is magic. We all could have been born an element, but none of us were friends. For a few minutes, we even hated each other. That was enough to break the element, to create you. We figure things out now. We've forgiven each other. We've learned how to get along, to work together. We've learned that we've got flaws, but we got strengths too. We're not perfect. We don't have to be. We just have to be there for each other when it matters most. Help each other out. We're friends. It took almost dying to make it happen, but it happened. That means the element is starting to repair itself. Antithesis felt shooting pain once more. She fell to the ground again, wings wide. She looked up, but her vision had gotten even worse. She couldn't even see separate unicorns anymore. Just one. Twilight, Trixie, she didn't know. She couldn't tell. But she hated her. She began crawling forward, wings wide. I don't care, she gasped. I don't. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you no matter what. You're going to die. You're going to die. I'm going to kill you. Unicorn tried forward. Gold silver seemed to surround her body in a halo of light. No, you're not. Hate! Antithesis? I don't know if you're actually going to live through. Pain shot from Antithesis' chest again. She put one hoof to it, trying to keep whatever was in there in place, even as she began crawling forward. I don't care. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill everything you love. I hate you. I hate you. I hate everything. Hey, Conquest. Yeah? Is this another story of how you were made? I don't know. I have so many origin stories that I feel like I shouldn't just confine myself to one. I mean, if I'm going to have an origin story, I want to have multiple choice. The element magic was not torn bodily from Antithesis. The unicorn simply convulsed. There was a flash, and quite suddenly it was there, a gemstone floating in front of her chest, over her heart. Antithesis' hooves reached out, trying to grab it. I drifted out of reach, floating to just before the four unicorns, arranged in a semicircle before Antithesis. The gem was a simple hexagon, looking like neither Twilight's nor Trixie's cueing mark. And indeed, it floated equidistant between the four of them. Even as the entire forest became lost, in the appearance of a suddenly, seemingly endless field of light that stretched in every direction, occupied only by the four unicorns and one dying alicorn. Antithesis stared at the four of them, the element of magic. As the unicorns watched, her wings began to dissolve to dust, as did the tips of her hooves, her tail and mane. She took to the hooves in shock as she disappeared, mouth moving a few times without sound coming out. It doesn't hurt, she said. More than half her body disappeared. I thought it would hurt. Twilight grimaced, taking a step forward in spite of herself, in spite of everything. Antithesis' existence was ending. She was dying, if indeed she had ever been alive in the first place. Antithesis, she said, I'm sorry that I'm not, Antithesis said. Looking at Twilight, she continued to disappear. Almost all her body had dissolved into dust by now. As the disappearance began tracing its way up to her neck and to her head, Ears began to claim her horn. I'm not sorry, and if I ever come back, I'll do it again. Her eyes narrowed as she regarded Twilight cruelly. My biggest regret is not taking one of you with me. I don't hate you, though, Twilight said. Not now. I just pity you. You never really could have grown beyond what you were. I'd change that if I could. Antithesis was little more than her face. Even that was disappearing now. I don't want to change, she said, disappearing nothing into narrow, heat-filled eyes and a mouth clenched teeth. At last, even those dissolved into nothingness, and Antithesis was gone.